After more than a decade, the wait is almost over because Apple is finally bringing us another display that is going to be affordable like their previous Thunderbolt display was. And it looks like we're gonna have 3 and maybe possibly 4 displays coming out with a variety of sizes and price points. So today we'll cover all of the displays that are coming out, including one that will have an eGPU built into it, the features and the specs of these, and the likely price points as well. People have been asking for a new Apple display ever since Apple discontinued their Thunderbolt display in 2016 and gave people an LG option that really didn't compare. Now, I was a person who bought that right away with the redesigned 2016 MacBook Pro, and while it was a nice 5K screen with a panel that matched their 5K iMacs because it literally was the same exact display, it really didn't compare because the build quality didn't look good. Didn't feel good. The display was very wobbly on that stand, and it just wasn't the same as Apple's. Now, of course, they did give us the XDR 6K display, which I've been using now for probably about, almost 2 years or so. But most people can't afford a $6,000 display, and they have no need for one. Now, we have had rumors of a new Apple display coming for a while, but recently we have much more concrete information. Dylan DKT recently said that there are 3 LG-made displays encased in unbranded enclosures for usage as external monitors that are in early development, 2 of which have had the same exact specs as the upcoming 27-inch redesigned iMac and the 24-inch iMac that we already currently have. And with that, we also have Mark Gurman's report that is very similar, talking about Apple working on a lower price monitor that they will sell alongside the Pro Display XDR, which is of course what all of us want, and it makes sense with Apple finally putting effort into the Mac Mini, which we're waiting on the Mac Mini Pro, and then alongside of that we are going to have an updated Mac Pro as well, and all these new MacBooks and iMacs, which really need a nice display. Now, right now, even 6 years later, Apple is still selling that LG Ultrafine 5K for the same $1,300 price. Now, it's interesting that LG, which partnered with Apple to create this Ultrafine lineup for Apple's Macs, also recently released 2 displays, a 27-inch and a 32-inch. And even though it's using the same branding, the same style, Apple, they're not selling this display on their website. So if this was the next replacement, it would make sense for them to also sell it as well, but they are not. And that's another reason why we know that Apple, they're making their own displays and they're gonna be releasing them soon. Now let's get into the details of these displays. The first one is gonna be a 24-inch size. Now on Apple's website, they sell the LG Ultrafine 4K display for $700. So it's not crazy expensive, but it still isn't cheap. Now, if you look over here, it says literally currently unavailable and pickup unavailable as well. So it's interesting that even though it's on here, you're not able to order it. Now, of course, we have the new M1 iMacs that came out, and they have a slightly smaller size. It's actually 23.5 inches, but the resolution is actually higher. So it's a different panel inside of the iMac, and LG, they are the ones that make these displays for Apple. So what we are expecting is basically something that looks very similar to that iMac, but without that chin, with the same exact mount, the same design, something that's easy for Apple to manufacture, and then the same exact display that is in there. And that will be a great option for people who want to buy a Mac Mini, who just want to buy a MacBook Air or Pro and also want a smaller display at a reasonable price, and something that's going to have good color accuracy and brightness. Now, the second display that a lot of people are focusing on is, of course, that 27-inch size. We know that Apple is working on the 27-inch iMac and also the iMac Pro, which may or may not be the same device, or they could split it up, but we have conflicting info on the display. Some people are just saying LCD, which is what we have in that LG Ultrafine 5K. And then we also have very specific info from Ross Young, who is a display analyst, talking about a new mini LED display for the iMac Pro that will have about 1,000 zones and about 4,000 mini LEDs. Now that is actually better quality and higher density and more zones than my 6K Pro Display XDR. And then of course we have talks about ProMotion as well. Some people are saying that it could cost about $1,500, and some other people are saying up to $2,500, which is a lot cheaper than their $5,000 display with a $1,000 stand, but still way too expensive. Now the $1,500 price point makes quite a bit of sense because it's $200 more than what LG's Ultrafine is selling for right now, and Apple, they have been raising their prices on their latest products, and of course with that we would have a nicer quality display that's Apple branded, so I think that's reasonable, but it's hard to imagine getting that display with mini LED for that price point. Now, the people are saying $2,500, that is more in line with the mini LED built into it. And who knows, maybe if Apple was making a separate iMac Pro that does offer mini LED and the base iMac has regular LED, then you could have another option or maybe a second display listing for that mini LED feature. Now, if we look at the market, there are a lot of good displays, but any display that is capable of such high brightness for HDR color grading, you start getting the $4,000 and $5,000 territory for 4K displays. So if Apple does release a display for $2,500 with mini LED, it would actually be a pretty good deal. Now, of course, we also have the info on the new updated Pro Display XDR, and it is gonna have to have a lot of updates. The latest info that we're getting on it is that it will have a dedicated A13 chip and a neural engine built into the display, which will be effectively used as an eGPU. And this info has been around for a long time. We've had leaks of this back from 2016 with having a display with an integrated GPU. Now that may not make a lot of sense. Why would they have something that's limited? But if we're thinking about an A13 or maybe even an A15 chip at this point, that would give Apple a lot of capabilities for this display. For example, it could have AirPlay 2 support, it could potentially have Face ID, the new features for FaceTime if it just has that built-in webcam, which we would expect, have sidecar support, and probably graphics processing if you connect it to a display that isn't capable of the 120Hz ProMotion and the mini LED HDR brightness or resolutions with higher refresh rates. If you connect to older Macs, they might not have the capability. And then also connecting to Macs that have just Intel processors in general, we've seen that there are limitations, and having this chip be built into that display would fix that, because we know that Apple, they're working on a redesigned Mac Pro, not only the smaller form factor with the Apple Silicon chip, but also another Intel model that will be launching. And with that Intel model, they're going to be releasing that for people that still need certain features that don't run on Apple Silicon, or potential hardware, for example, up to 1.5 terabytes of RAM, which you're not going to be able to get with the Apple Silicon version. Now, with the Intel Macs, there are certain features that you actually flat out can't use with macOS Monterey, because you need the processing of the Apple Silicon chip to be able to enable that. For example, we have portrait mode with the FaceTime camera that's built into that display, things with maps, object capture, Siri, text-to-speech, dictation, all these things that use a neural engine to accelerate it, that just flat out won't work on Intel-based Macs. So if they put this chip into the display, no matter what you connect it to, you will have all the features and it will just use that to process it. So there you guys go. We have 3 displays coming out. Let me know which one are you gonna be most interested for. Will you spend up to $2,500 for a 27-inch that has mini LED, or is that too high? Would you rather prefer an Apple version of the LG Ultrafine without many changes? We're excited to see that. We're excited for Apple's March event. You guys can check out a couple great videos right over there. This has been Max, and I'll see you in the next video.